After being bitten by a venomous spider, Peter Parker transforms into a unique sort of superhero. Our hero Peter Parker tells us that his story started because of a girl. Peter had a lot of problems like being bullied, lacking self-confidence, and loves a girl and can't feel her. We see Peter tries to catch a school bus and the driver as usual bothers him and he doesn't want to stop until the beautiful Jan shouts for the driver to stop, and the driver stopped when she threatened him that she would inform the administration about what he was doing. Then Peter enters and regrets that he was late and no one wants to let him sit next to him. But Peter's whole focus was with Jane. Yes, she is the girl he loves, but she's Flash's girlfriend, and Peter loves her since he was 6 years old because they are neighbors from a long time ago. Later, the students arrive at Azkaban Company because they have a field visit there, and from here everything starts to change. The teacher warns the students so that no one gets lost of him as they did last month. Later, all the students enter and Harry, Peter's only friend, arrives. He arrives with his father Norman, one of the founders of Azkaban Company, and he is a scientist and a great inventor, and he wishes Harry to be like him and always compare between him and his colleagues like Peter, who was the first time to be got to know him today. And Harry said a lot about him and told him that he is an ambitious and successful young man, especially in science, and that's what Norman likes. And he wanted to meet Peter's family, but he told that he lived with his uncle Ben and his wife May. Then Harry and Peter joined the rest of the students, and they were Azkaban employees explaining to them about spiders and the great ability they have, and after their experience on them. Then Peter is self-focused with Jane and Flash, who tries to get close to her, but she upset with him. Then they stand in front of one of the box spiders, and when Peter tries to take a picture, Flash hits him, so they transfer to another one, and Flash makes the same do. So Harry gets annoyed and warns Flash not to be bother his friend, but they make fun of Harry and ask him if they don't stop doing that, will he ask his father to kick them out. But Harry doesn't want his father to get into these problems because the student bully him because of him, and they think he depends on his father, but he isn't. When the supervisor finds them fighting, he warned them that the one who will fall in his subject will fall the whole year. Then Peter and Harry go at another spider, and Harry tells that he's disgusting and not interested in these animals. But Peter explains more about spiders and tell him that they adapt according to the environment they are in. But Harry said he doesn't care about all this. Later, the students go to a new type of spider, and Harry asks Peter if he intends to talk to Jane, but he says no talk to her. So Harry goes to talk to her and uses the information Peter told him to get closer to her. So Peter got upset. Then Jane listens to the employees and tells her that we are missing a spider. So she tells her that sure, it isn't in the lab to do experiments on it, but the truth is that the spider runs away and weaves its strings on them. Later, Peter asks Jane for a picture for the school magazine, and he takes pictures, but he doesn't notice that the escaped spider that came down on his hand. Then Jane leaves, and the spider beat Peter, but he doesn't care. But this spider is hybrid, and it's from different genus of venomous spider. Then we find the Azkaban scientists who have developed a new weapon for the army, but it's still not complete, and Dr. Normal arrives to attend the sled test in the suit and asks the army commander about the latest test report. So Dr. Storm tells that the experiments on mice aren't good, so they have to repeat the experiments again. So Norman gets angry and says they are gonna to start human experiments, but Storm refuses and tells him that this is dangerous and they need only 1 week to correct these mistakes. But the leader isn't patient because Quest is offering him a new weapon and he can cancel the funding of Azkaban anytime. So Norman is annoyed and worried about his company. At Peter's house, we find Uncle Ben is upset and complains to May that he is discharged from his work and looks for a job, but his age isn't qualified to find a good job, especially that is still all about technology right now. Later, Harry gets home and he isn't normal and runs to his room directly, and he tells them that he's tired. Later, Peter's temperature is very high and he looks gravely ill, and we discovered that the spiders is genetically modified to be used in human experiments and give humans the power of spiders. But when Peter was bitten by the spider, it changed his genes. At Oscorp, Normal designs to try the new product on himself because he's worried about his company. So Storm helps him to transfer, but his heart stops. So Storm enters him while he's shocked. But Norman wakes up suddenly and grabs Storm and says that he looks abnormal and has a strange power. And he throws Storm away. And because of him, he dies. Next day, Harry is normal and is surprised that he sees without glasses. And also he gets muscles. Then May calls him because he will be late for school, so he wears and runs, but he does unusually active, and all are surprised of the vitality and activity that Peter is in. Then he goes out and finds Jane going out, and hears her father shouting for her, and he walks quickly to talk to her, but he can't catch her, and he wishes to tell her that he loves her from a long time, but her friends arrives and take her with them in the car. And as usual, Peter ran to catch the bus, and he is surprised that he fast and takes the bus poster in his hand. Later, Harry enters to Norman and finds him sleeping on the floor and tired, so he wakes him up and asks him if he is God and tells that there are people from the company outside and they want him. And Norman tries to remember what happened and he doesn't remember anything. And his colleagues enter and tell that Storm was killed and the Sly and the suit were stolen. But Norman doesn't know what happened. At school, Peter has lunch and he finds Jane falls, but he catches up with her before she falls quickly and collects the food in the way that he himself is surprised at. And Jane thanks him and tells him that he is very fast. And he is happy because he finally talked to her, but his hand gets strings out of it and sticks to another tray. Peter is shocked and trying to hide what happened, but the tray hits the Flash, so he wants to fight Peter, so Peter leaves the place, but insists that he fights with him, so Jane tries to stop him, but Flash beats him, and Peter avoids his hits in a strange and fast way. And Jane says to Harry to help him, but Harry tells her that Flash who needs help. Then Peter hits Flash quickly, and all the students are afraid of him, so he gets annoyed and gets out of the school, but he remembers the beta and that it might have transformed him, and he looks at his hand and finds teeth like the teeth on the hand of the spider, and tries to climb the wall, and really succeeds. Then he tries to make a net and keeps jumping from one building to another while he's happy. Later, he comes home late and finds Ben and May finished painting, so he takes out the trash. So he meets Jane outside and she was out after she fought with his father. Then they talk and she asks him what does she intend after graduation. So he says she will move to another city and work as a photographer. She also intends to do the same thing and move to the city and work in acting. So Peter encourages her and she's happy because of his encourage. Then Flash delivers with his new car and takes her with him. So Peter thinks of buying a car to attract Jane, and he looks for a job and finds an advertisement for 3-minute wrestling competition for $3,000. So he makes to himself suit like a spider shape that is inspired by the colors of the clothes and hair of Jane. Later, he keeps training all the time and humiliating the room with strings. And when he leaves, his uncle insists to give him a ride, and on the way he tells him that the fights aren't good, and he knows what happened and advises him if he feels that he wants to talk, he is here. So Peter gets annoyed and says that don't act like a father. So Ben gets sad, but he says an important sentence that the extra power is accompanied by increased responsibility. Later, Peter goes to register in the contest and everyone is making fun of him because he is weak, but he can beat his huge wrestler. And when he got the money, the owner of the ring doesn't give him all the money because he got rid of the wrestler before the specified time. So Peter gets annoyed and gets out. Then a thief enters on him and robs that place. But Peter doesn't accept helping the owner, and he is happy because he was robbed. And he comes out and he waits for Ben. But suddenly, Ben was shot by a thief, and the police report that they chase the criminal. And Peter goes after them, and he can surround him in a deserted place, and he is shocked that the thief who let him run away. So Peter fights with him and feeling guilty that his uncle's death was because of him, and he kills the thief by mistake, but Beetle felt relieved. Then he runs away from the police before they arrest him, and he goes to May and tells what happened. Later, the leader goes to Quest Company, but the sled appears and a person rides it and kills all, even the leader and the owner of the experience. After a while, Peter and Harry and Jane graduate, and Norman congratulates Harry and tells him he's happy because he was wrong, and he graduates successfully from the school, and he consults Peter and tells him that they become one family, and Jay separates from Flash, and so Harry becomes happy. Later, Peter comes back home and thinks about Ben and cries, and May tells him that she misses him too, and he says that the reason of his sad is that the last day they fought together, but she tells him she was like his father, and he understands what he's going through. Later, Peter decides to develop his suit, then he saves the people and gives the thieves to the police, but they think that they should arrest him. But there's a group that liked him. At newspaper, James wants to publish the news of Spider-Man because readers ask for the news about him, and tells them if anyone took pictures of Spider-Man, he has a reward. Later, Peter is at town after Norman gives him and Harry an apartment, and he meets Jane by coincidence and knows that she works in a restaurant, and the dream of acting hasn't come true, and asks him not to tell Harry. So he is shocked because they are dating and Harry didn't tell him. So he says goodbye to her while he's upset because his friend loves her. Then Peter comes home and he finds Norman there, but Harry is annoyed and tells Peter that he comes to check on them, and Harry says he wants him to choose the project with him, but he noted that Peter is upset, so he asks him what happened. So he tells that he fired from his job because he's very late. Harry is surprised and he suggests that he work with his father in the company, but Peter refuses. Then Norman asks Peter if he knows a girl that Harry loves, but Peter says he doesn't know anything about her because Harry didn't talk about her. So Harry tries to change their talk and tells his father that Peter needs a job and he hopes if he takes the company because he loves science. So Norman agrees, but Peter refuses and tells that he prefers to depend on himself. So Norman likes him more, and jealousy shows on Harry's face. And Norman asks him if he has other skills, so he says he loves photography. Then Peter finds an advertisement for James' newspaper asking for pictures of Spider-Man for a good amount of money, and he thinks that he will apply in it. At night, Peter finds a robbery of one of the cars that transfer money to the bank, and the thieves beat the guard. But before they steal the car, Peter appears in his suit and beats them and takes a picture of himself with the camera that he fixed in the tree. Next day, he goes to newspaper, but he tells him that the pictures aren't nice and he will buy them for a small price, but Peter refused. So James says to him, go to another newspaper. So Peter leaves, but James tells him he will buy it for $300 after he knows that his newspaper increased its sales after the news of Spider-Man appeared in it, and let Peter's pictures appear on the front page. And Peter agrees with the newspaper. He comes back with new pictures of Spider-Man. At Normal Company, he meets the company board to discuss their new project, but he is surprised that they ask him to resign from the presidency of the company because it loses and they will sell it for Quest Company, which despite the explosion, it's able to stand on again. And Normal tells them that he's one of the company's makers and it's impossible for them to walk without him, but they force him to resign, and the sale for Quest Company will be at annual celebration tomorrow. So Normal agrees, but his looks aren't reassuring at all. Later, Harry and Jane attend the annual celebration of the company because Harry wants to introduce his father to Jane, but she is annoyed because Harry asked her why she didn't wear the black dress because his father cares about the appearance very much, but she tells that if he likes her, she will like his father and she doesn't have to change herself. And Peter also be there filming the event, and he as usual focus with Jane. Later, Harry knows that his father isn't coming to the party from the new manager. Then Peter feels that there is something strange. They are surprised by someone who flies on a skateboard and they call him the green ghost. Then the ghost throws a bomb at the building, so demolish part of the building, and Jane hangs on to it, but Harry fainted. Then the ghost throws bomb at the heads of the company and transformed them to skeletons. Because of what he did, the building was going to fall on the people, so Peter becomes Spider-Man and saves the people and tries to hit the ghost, but he's stronger than him and hit him below him away, and he shoots him while trying to save Jane until he can't get out with the board. He rides and the ghost escapes before they discover him because it drives energy from the board. Then Peter saved Jane at the last minute and took her away until they arrived to the garden, and she asks him, "Who are you?" And he told her she knows him well, but she doesn't understand, but she falls in love with him. Then Harry checks on Jane at home, and she tells about Spider-Man who saved her and how wonderful he was, and Harry is jealous because he couldn't save her. Then Peter checks on her and tells Harry that she is fine, but she looks confused, and he asks him if he knows anything about what happened, but Peter doesn't know what he is and tells him that someone should face him. And Harry asks him if he is sad because his relation with Jane, but he didn't try to talk to her once, that's why he engaged to her. But Peter said that he doesn't like her and lies. In Norman's house, he hears strange sounds of laughter, so he's shocked and keeps looking around until he looks in the mirror, and he talks to himself madly as if someone else is talking. Then he knows that the green ghost is Normal, but Normal denies what he says and doesn't believe that he killed these people, but the voice reminds him of the day of the experiment when the doctor do it on him. At the time, he is the one who killed his colleagues and turned into the green ghost, and he said that they must kill Spider-Man or unite with them because he's the only one capable of facing him and destroying his dreams, and if he did that, he will return to his company again, but he must know who is Spider-Man. Later, Peter delivers the pictures to James, but he gets annoyed when James says false news about Spider-Man to get much money. Then he attacks him and asks him about the photographer who brings him to the pictures of Spider-Man because he wants to get him, but James denies that he knows him and that the pictures come to him by email. Then Peter changes his clothes quickly and goes to Norman, but Norman dragged and took him to the roof of the building. Later, Peter wakes up and asks where is he, and Norman tells that he is with him and he comes to offer him work together, and if they unite, they will control the city. But Peter refuses to share these crimes with him because he doesn't want to be like him, and he is supposed to be a hero, not a criminal. But Normal tells him he will meet him again, then he will know his response, and he leaves and he doesn't take off the mask or know who is. Then he meets Jane and says he is accidentally passing by here and invites her for dinner, but she tells him she's going to have dinner with Harry, but she wants him to join them, but he refuses and she is still out of a performance experience, and she is upset because she didn't accept and leaves him to catch Harry. But Peter discovers that there is two suspects goes after her, but before they hurt her, Peter saves her, and then she asks to talk to him and asks him if he walked behind her to save her. He told her it was a coincidence, and this is the same sentence as Peter. She asked him to know who he is, but he refuses. Next day, there is a fire in a big building, and there is a baby inside that no one can save until Peter Spider-Man arrives and enters to save the child, and the mother thanks him, but the policeman wants to arrest him, but they hear a child voice calling for the help, and the policeman tells Peter to save her, and he goes. Then Peter calls for the child and sees someone wrapping himself in the blanket, but he isn't surprised that she isn't a child and that he is a Norman, and he makes a girl voice. Norman tells he is naive and he is the reason of fire to meet him, and he asks him if he accepts his offer, but Peter refuses, and Norman hides bombs, and when he hears Peter refused, he throws bombs at him, but Peter can avoid them. Then he throws knives and he can also escape from them, but one of them injures his arm, and both hits each other, but the building explodes, so the ghost withdraws before he dies and promises him that he will come back to him again and he must accept his offer or kill him. Later, Norman going to Harry Harry's house to attend for the feast, and Jane is there, and Harry wants to introduce his father to her. Then Norman delivers, and when he sees Jane, he asks who she is, so Harry tells him that Jane is his lover, and they ask about Peter, and May tells them that he hasn't arrived yet, but they hear a knock on the top, so they get surprised that he is above, and they go up, but they don't find anyone, and Peter hangs from the ceiling, but a drop of blood falls from him on the ground, and Norman finds it, but when he looks at the ceiling, he doesn't find anyone, so he knows that Spider-Man was here, and he starts to doubt Peter. Then Peter arrives from the out, and while they eat, May notice that Peter's hand bleeds, and Norman sees the wand in his hand, so he asks him about it, but he lies, but Norman knows the shape of the wand of his weapon, and suddenly he leaves them, but Harry tells him to wait, and he is upset because he wants to meet Jane. Then they are outside the apartment, but their voice is high, and he tells him that Jane isn't of his level, and he wants a good girl, and he says bad words about her and leaves. When he enters, he asks them if someone heard anything, so Jane tells him they hear everything, and she is mad, but Harry says to her not to be insult his father because she isn't like him, and everyone fights, and dinner is ruined because of Peter, who still doesn't know that Norman is the ghost. Then the ghost and tells Norman he must kill Peter and must hurt the closest one to him, so he goes to May while she is preparing for sleep, and she is afraid of him, and she enters to the hospital. Then Peter arrives, and he finds her collapsed, and she says she saw his eye. Peter understands it's talking about ghost, and he knows that the ghost knew who he was, but he doesn't know who him. The next day, Jane arrives to check on her, and Peter asks her if she is still mad at Harry. She tells that she doesn't love him, and she loves Spider-Man, so he tells her he talked about you, and he knows that he is his photographer, so she is happy. Later, Harry arrives, and Jane pulls her hand from Peter's hand, and he leaves upset, and he tells his father about what happened, so Norman thinks to take revenge on Jane. Later, May wakes up and tells Peter to go back home, and tells him that she heard him when he was talking to Jane, and she knows that he loves her from the time she came to live next to them, so he asks her if his love for her is very clear like this, so she says of course, and everyone notices, but Peter is afraid and thinks the ghost knows him, so he might know Jane and might hurt her because of him, and this is what happened, because when he called her, Norman answered him with the ghost voice and tells if he wants to save her, he will meet him on the bridge. Then Jane finds herself on the bridge with no safety around her. At the same time, the cable car passes by the group of kids, and they see the ghost, and they are impressed until he destroys the wire carrying the car that the children were in. And when Peter arrives, the ghost holds Jane in one hand, and the car in the other hand, and Peter given the voice between saving both and accepting his offer for choosing to save one of them, and refuse the offer, but Peter refuses to join him, so he leaves the rope and Jane. So Peter gets down quickly to catch Jane, and then he holds the rope carrying the car, but the car is very heavy. Fortunately for him, there is a ship, and the workers tell him to bear a little until they are under the car and leave it, but Norman attacks him, and the car falls from him, but he catches it quickly, but people started throwing things at him and encourage Peter to save the kids. Then he can catch the car and get it down safely with them and saves Jane, and the ghost can reveal Peter's face, and he is close to killing him, but Peter gathered his strength and attacks him, and able to expose his face, and is surprised that he's Norman, so he keeps hitting him until Norman pretending that he doesn't know what is going on, and that the ghost is the one who controlled him, and he begs him to help him so that the ghost doesn't control him again, but Norman is behind him, moving his sled to kill Peter, but Peter's sense of danger alerts him, and the sled kills Norman, who begs Peter before he dies that his son Harry doesn't know anything of what happened. Later, Peter takes him home dead and without the ghost suit, and Harry sees him and asks Spider-Man, "What are you doing here?" But he's surprised that his father died, and he suspected that Spider-Man is the one who killed his father. And at his father's funeral, Peter condolences him, and Harry tells him that Spider-Man killed his father and he will take revenge on him one day. And Peter feels guilty and the main secret that he's carrying, and he can't talk to anyone. Then he visits his uncle Ben's grave, and Jane goes to him, who confesses her love to him, and she says that she didn't see him, although he was the only person standing next to her and interested in her and believing in her talent for the sake of his friend who is alone, and promises her that he will stay with her for the rest of the life and support her as her brother. And Peter leaves her, and one sentence that he remembers from his uncle Ben: "The big power will have more responsibility." Until here, the first part of our movie today finished, and wait for the remaining parts of our Spider-Man series. You'll love action, suspense, and mystery. We have it. Also existed in the common many. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and that's okay. Bye bye.